as such, these buildings are not depicted within the list in the matrix. And what we are trying to do in this review is to look into buildings that are not included. We are also trying to cater for those who gained experience in the past working on buildings that are not included in the current matrix, so that those buildings are included. And we would like to also review, we would like to give you, our RPs, this opportunity. We would like to hear from you what the issues are with IDoW. The main purpose of today's session is to listen to our RPs. We are here today to hear from you what the impacts are with IDoW, what are the needs that are needed, what do we need to add and improve so that the statutory mandate that's currently offered by SACEP, the offering gets improved. So we are here to listen to everyone. We are here to hear your concerns. We are here to give you an opportunity so that you can list all the serious problems, all the serious concerns and problems core to IDoW that are affecting you as a practicing architect or draftsperson. So today's opportunity is for you, and we want to hear from yourselves how we can improve IDoW policy. Obviously, there has also been research done by SACEP after the LSD assessments. There's been findings made there that there are buildings that are not included, and we need to include them. So there is going to be a presentation made in terms of what we foresee going forth in terms of buildings that we would like to include. At the moment, we've not aligned who gets to do what type of building, meaning which category of registration would be competent to do a specific type of building. There's still going to be engagements going forth with the Education Committee, obviously assisted by architectural learning sites and academia, so that we align the complexities with the registration categories. So today's session, colleagues, to all the 355 participants, it's really your session, and we want to hear from the floor how best we can improve IDoW and how this process can be inclusive. All right, so how I foresee this to unfold, we are going to allow participants perhaps to raise hands. These will be managed by IT. You can raise a hand and you'll be allowed to speak and raise any concerns, objections, serious problems you are currently having with IDoW. We will note those down during this session. The session is recorded. And at the end of the session, today, we are going to request everyone in attendance today, even if you didn't get an opportunity to speak, you will be requested to submit a written submission in the form of comments. These will be formatted by SACEP so that we give everyone an opportunity to air their concerns. So those written submissions will later be accepted. If I can also add, we had engagements the past 2 days with various other VAs. We met with FACE, we met with IID, SIAT, CYBERT, we met with SIA, various regions, and many other VAs so that we can fulfill our mandate. You know, our mandate is to ensure that IDoW is implemented. We need to regulate the profession, and it's a statutory mandate that we need to fulfill. So we need your assistance here today, so that we improve on the statutory mandate. So colleagues, I'm going to then request IT perhaps to then allow participants to raise hands and speak to those concerns they have with IDoW. Panel, the floor is open if you would like to speak, and perhaps appeal to the participants in terms of this review process we are undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right now we have got three hands. The first one is Ronald Basson, followed by Jacobos, followed by Sofa. The other one dropped the hand.
I think we can allow them in. Mr. Basson, you can speak. Mr. Basson, the floor is yours. All right, it seems Mr. Basson is struggling with audio. Can we allow Mr. Jacobs? I presume it's Mr. Jacobs, Rifat Jacobs.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rifat Jacobs. My question isn't actually in regards to the IDoW, but my LSD application have connection with this, and I want to really express myself very well. I'm Afrikaans speaking, but I'll try to do it in English. I would like to express my unhappiness and my frustration with the way SACAP is handling my LSD application. I've been struggling to receive feedback from you guys. It's over a year now. And it cannot go on like this anymore.
Can you mute? Okay. Okay,
Hello?
you can proceed, Mr. Jacobs. Yes, please proceed.
I've been struggling to see feedback from SACAP for over a year now. I've applied last year for the LSD. And my business is facing a financial loss due to the delay of SACAP. I've already sent, today will be my 7th email that I'm going to send to Kimberly Rowan regarding my application. And up until today, I've not even received any satisfactory reply. We as professionals are prohibited from practicing if we don't pay our annual fees and our CPD points is not up to date. I feel that my money is good enough for SACAP, but not the seriousness of my situation, because it's beyond my understanding that this application is taking so long. The behavior and the cooperation of SACAP is unacceptable to me as a professional and also a member of the public. You guys are bleeding my business to the bone for a long time now, as well as the economy of South Africa. How can architecture move forward in this country if I am a professional? I'm a technologist, and I'm entitled to the same service as an architect, the same service as a draftsman, the same service as a senior professional. I have colleagues that applied, we applied simultaneously for this LSD application, and all of them already got approval for this. But I'm not sure what is happening with my LSD application, and that is my problem that I'm sitting here. But I can tell you, Vusi, and this is coming out of my heart, be assured of a professional that has lost his respect in SACEP and their systems. I leave the floor to you now.
Yeah. Mr. Jacobs, if I can respond on your circumstance. I acknowledge your frustration. I note that you are despondent, and I apologize on behalf of SACEP. The LSD application process is ongoing. Remember, this new offering, it's a new offering, and we experienced teething problems in terms of how applicants submit their POE. The aim of this LSD offering was to ensure that you continue practicing unhindered, unaffected, based on your experience. These assessments are ongoing, and we apologize to anyone who's been aggrieved by this process. SACEP is working tirelessly. I'm part of that process to ensure that outcomes for your LSD applications are communicated. But I can say there were teething problems. Some applications were referred back due to lacking evidence. So SACEP has really tried to accommodate, applicants. But I note the frustration in the time it's taken, and I would also like to appeal that we give SACEP, Kimberly, and the others an opportunity to just work on these LSD applications and outcome so that it's communicated to everyone. So that's the concern from Mr. Jacobs. It's relating to LSD application. I don't know if Councillor Moideen would like to respond to Mr. Jacobs also.
Mr. I apologize. I can remember your name very clearly. You are from Ceres, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I am from Ceres, yes.
We dealt with your application and you will be notified, but you must remember there is almost over, I think there's about 1,800 applications. What we ask of you is a little bit of patience, but there will be correspondence. I can remember your name very clearly. It was dealt with, and you will get an answer from the education department. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, Mr. Decker has connected. Can we allow him to introduce himself? Mr. Decker, if you're ready.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and apologies for this thing here. I could connect, I could hear you the whole time, but I couldn't participate. So my name is Frans Dekker. I'm an independent member of the IDoW committee. Oh, there's a lot of noise in the background. And yeah, I'm a senior technologist by profession.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Mr. Jacobs, can you mute yourself? If you can, IT, manage the mute. Mr. Passon, you are next on the screen. Your hand is up. Can you voice out your concerns relating to IDoW?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me now?
Hi, Ronaldo. I apologize.
No.
I
All good. Yes,
Oh,
thanks for
good.
giving me a chance to speak
Yeah,
and for the opportunity
you.
for us to raise our comments. I actually have like 3 comments to make. First of all, it's very unclear why these categories are taken away from architectural senior technologists, because I know about other friends that only studied until their diploma just to do residential, and now all of a sudden they can't do, for example, a double story or yeah. So we are actually forced to further our studies, but there's no opportunity to do your master's degree online because no one can afford to stop working and finish your studies, never mind the financial implication. The next item is as well with we all know about COVID. Now with this IDoW or the LSD came 2 years after COVID. So a lot of us were forced or were retrenched or whatever reason to basically go on your own, starting your own firm. And now you've been what do you call it? You've been taken, your opportunities are being taken away for signing off certain projects. Now, especially with me, luckily I wasn't retrenched. I was luckily in a fortunate position to start my own business just after COVID. But there were so many applications of my projects that is still running in council. So I had no proof to in some of the, like, for example, an office building. I only had 1 office building to send in, but it wasn't approved yet by council. So I couldn't send it in, but I did manage to gather letters from council to say it is in process. It's not approved yet. As soon as it's approved, I will forward it. But yeah, then the cutoff line was there. And I applied for my LSD last year, October, November. I only got my first answer back from SACAP now 2 weeks ago. And in the meantime, I can't sign off some of these categories because I'm waiting for SACAP. And I was actually, some of the projects that I could manage to forward with my application, occupancy certificates of big projects, which was done, built, everything, and I was rejected. So yeah, I've got no idea how to deal with this. I'm at the point to do my RPL, but with SACAP, they do admit as well that they are a year behind with their admin. So it's no point of me to do my RSL as well, of RPL, because it's going to take another year or 2. So I don't know what to do. Should I close my business, start studying again? That's a big financial implication because I've got employees that I can't retrench them. I'm in a difficult position because I can't study online a master's degree. There's not something available like that. I'm prepared to do it, but I can't. There's not something available. So yeah, it's a catch-22 situation, and I don't know how you guys are going to deal with it because I'm sure I'm not the only one in this position.
Okay, thank you, Ronaldo. I think for me, I note your frustration, and I'm also going to allow the panel to speak on your circumstance or issue. I think you still have other options available to you. Remember, limited special dispensation, although it was for a limited period, you still have other mechanisms available for you to progress, such as special consent. Once those plans are approved at the municipality that offers development, you can still submit those plans for special consent. I also note your frustration you have, whether you have to study, work, or apply for RPL. I would recommend that you start applying for RPL so that you can then be allowed to do the other categories of buildings. The process isn't cumbersome. It doesn't take long. We are not a year behind in administration. we are processing RPL assessments, and I will appeal to you to apply for RPL so that you can be upgraded to the next level and so that the profession gets transformed. So I'm really going to appeal to you, Ronaldo, to apply for RPL. Mr. Govender?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to share the same sentiments. Ronaldo, yes, your situation is looking bleak to yourself, but as the chairperson has pointed out, I would personally recommend you continue with your RPL application, because if you've done the work and for whatever reason you were not able to satisfy the LSD requirements for exemption, the fact that you claim you've done the work, it means you've got the capabilities. So you just have to demonstrate that now through the RPL or even special consent, but RPL would be a better route, I think. It's more encompassing. So in that way, you get the recognition from SACAP to advance or migrate. And then I would also recommend that, you know, as and when the online opportunities come for studying to get your masters and so on, that also needs to happen so that you can get the actual qualification, because the RPL is just a recognition in South Africa, whereas your qualification eventually, if you do get to qualify as an architect, it's an international recognition. So I think we must keep that at the forefront. But I'd also like to point out to the members that, you know, the LSD committee that sits on this, we are volunteers or we are appointed and we sit as often as we can, but there's also time implications and cost implications. So it's not like there's people sitting at SACAP with a pile of LSD applications and doing nothing about it. There's sittings, there's sessions, there's schedules that need to take place. So it's not a thing that can be done overnight. And I think, you know, it's a long time that it's been happening, and I can understand the impact on one's practice and one's income. But to speed up the process, that means we need to have a lot more money. Then if you want faster results, then we have to have more fees. So, you know, it's about creating a balance that's workable, and also understanding that there's alternatives to where one door closes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Can we allow Mr. Bastu and the President to speak? Then we'll allow the next participant.
Chair, thank you. I will be brief. I'm hearing what Mr. Ronaldo concerns are. I think you'll have covered most of the concerns. I think we as SACAP or the IDoW committee will need to follow up with the ALSs and just see what online opportunities are available, so members of the registered professionals can then pursue, you know, their studies further. So I am aware that the University of Cape Town was in the process of actually rolling out an online program where artists could further their studies. So maybe we then engage with the education committee and the heads of department to see what progress has been made. I know that there were various challenges that we faced, you know, one of them being COVID, and this may have derailed some of the activity, the processes. But we are hearing you, Mr. Ronaldo, and we will get SACAP to follow up with the education, with the ALSs. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bastu. President?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, what has been a problem, you know, just to let the RPs know that it actually took some time for the applications to come through from the RPs for these LSDs applications. And we were even worried, SACAP, to say that why there is only a handful applications that are coming through. But most of the applications came very late, to an extent that we had to extend the deadline, you know, to accommodate a lot of applications that could have been excluded had we kept the initial deadline. So that created a lot of bottleneck because lots of applications came right at the end, and that is the congestion that has been created and we are trying to actually deal with that issue as well. To say, I'm trying to echo the sentiments that have been echoed here, to say that the process is ongoing, and unfortunately it happened right towards the end, at the end of the deadline, because everyone was rushing to get his or her application through, and a lot of time went or lapsed without submissions, and that happened, and then it has also created a backlog, a huge demand at the end. So, but each and every application that has been submitted is going to be processed. Those that have not been processed, those that have been processed, they are going to be communicated in the best way possible, so that everyone is satisfied with the outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, I'm going to now allow Mr. Peter Small to voice his concern with IDoW, or how best we can improve IDoW. Mr. Small, Peter, you are muted. Peter Small.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think most of my concerns have been addressed by the comments that the panelists have made. So I'm quite happy so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We are going to allow Mohammed Syed. Thank you, Mohammed. You can proceed. Mohammed, you're muted.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chair, for allowing us to voice our concerns. Yeah, just quickly about the LSD applications. It was, and we thankful for the opportunity that SACAP gave registered professionals to, to submit these applications, because a lot of professionals have been practicing for a while, and we are quite experienced in our respective fields. So we've submitted them on time, and I understand that there's volunteers looking at the LSD applications, and we're grateful for that. I've actually received my response, I think it was last month, in the month of April. Yeah, well, we're in June now, but it was in the month of April. Unfortunately, I was a little bit disappointed because a lot of the, in fact, all the categories that I had applied for were rejected, and I just needed to touch on one reason why it was rejected, and I failed to understand this because we've provided the information, and a simple example was there were no approved stamps on the drawings, hence we didn't accept your application, or we rejected your proposal to and you know, we've taken the time. It's been a time-consuming exercise to collate all these applications. Most of the jobs we've done, secondly, most of the jobs we've done stage 5 and stage 6 services, and for us to get a reply from SACAF that, you know, you haven't done anything, it's a little bit disheartening. You know, it was such a time-consuming exercise for us as well. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to resolve this, because we registered professionals, we've been practicing for a while, we've given you all the requisite information that you requested for you to review, and it's a blanket refusal. And it's just a little bit disconcerting. So I'd like a response, please.
All right, thank you, Mohammed. I note your issue you are having with the LSD application rejection. Now, if we just step back and look at the criteria which SACEP has set forth for one to be exempted or granted permission to continue doing that type of building. SACEP is a regulator. We have to protect the public. We are aligned to other statutory mandates. We are aligned to other regulations, like the National Building Regulations Act, National Building Standards. For us to be satisfied that you've met all other requirements, your plans must be approved. If that plan or that building has gone up to stage 5 and 6, it's likely in contravention of the Buildings Act, and it's an illegal structure. We can't grant you exemption for having done an illegal structure. So we need to be aligned to the laws of SA as the regulator. Hence, you are only granted exemption for an approved plan. That's a criteria which had been set forth when we initiated the process, that you will be allowed to do the work if it was approved by the local municipality. That's
Sorry,
the position. Yeah.
Sorry, could I just come in there?
Yes.
With respect, you are right, but all our applications that were submitted had an approval stamp. What more do we need to furnish to SACAP to prove that these plans are approved?
Okay. All right. In that case, your circumstance is unique. Mohammed, kindly send immediately an email to Kimberly indicating that the plans were approved, and so that the panel can look into it. Because if it was approved, that's the promise we made to our RPs, that if it's approved, you'll get an exemption.
Okay, thanks, noted. But I've been chatting to Kimberly, and she's responded to me via email about this matter, and I've been now asked additional questions about my company and whether my company is also registered with SACAP. Sorry, my company is just an entity; it's just a name.
Yeah.
The registered professional carries liability for the work that he or she is actually carrying out, not the company. I can have Joe Soap Architects, that's the name of the company,
Yeah.
but I don't need to be registered. It's not mandatory for me, for my company to be registered with SACAP. Me as an individual needs to be registered, and I am registered. So why is now there a request by Kimberly, and I'll share that email, that I need to now register my company with SACAP? I mean, this is nonsense, with due respect.
No, sorry, Mohammed, if I can please come in there. I think if I do remember your application, some of your drawings had shared responsibility. So the panel had requested that you just prove what your shared responsibility was, and that you are definitely the principal of the practice as well. That was all that they were requesting. And then
Sorry, there was 2 requests, Kimberly.
Okay.
I agree on that one.
Mohammed, can I request you to deal with your matters amicably? This platform is for everyone.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Governor, would you like to respond?
Yes, Chair. I think I just want to reiterate what Kimberly is saying, that the LSD process is specifically for registered principals, and where there's conflicting or ambiguous information, or we are not confident of the authenticity or where the responsibility lies in terms of which entity the work was performed under, then that would ask for or the drawings would be referred back to the RP. So we must be mindful, attendees and audience, that the SACAP Code of Conduct also plays a role, because LSD is specifically for the registered principals, not registered professionals, because that will fall under the special consent process. Limited special dispensation, just to clarify, is for registered principals so that their practices can continue unhindered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I allow Mr. Pascu to speak?
Chair, thank you. I'm actually, feeling for the applicants, but however, may I suggest that we set some house rules so we allow the entire 479 participants to be part of the process, and may, also request that the registrar then, note the concerns of all the RPs or having challenges with the, to communicate with them directly, and then we can then assist them, offline.
Okay.
That's my contribution, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pascu. President, is that a new hand or an old hand?
Sorry, it's old hand. Let me put it down.
Oh, thank you, President. Mr. Governor?
Chair, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of queries through you. We're going to have a lot of queries regarding the LSD and items like that. As you've tabled at the very outset, we're going to receive the written submissions and attend to them accordingly. This platform is specifically for the IDoW review, and over and above LSD, we also need to move on to other agenda items. Otherwise, the time is going to be consumed. So I do understand there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of frustration, but if that can be tabled and submitted, then we could attend to that, because we will be soon out of time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Mohammed, I think we addressed your issue. If you can, just send that email directly to Kimberly, copy the registrar, so that we expedite your matter sooner. The next query, I'm going to the Q&As. IT, if you can allow other participants, if they have other queries.
Yes, Mr. Peter.
Yes, Mr. Peter Small, can we have your query? I think Peter has.
Hello. No,
Yes.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Yes, can you proceed?
As I said a few minutes ago, I think my concerns have been addressed by the.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
From the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Franco Swanepoel.
Hello, thank you, Chair.
Yes.
I think my question directly relates to IPOW. We specialize, I'm a registered architectural senior technologist since the very start, and we specialize in as-built surveying and scanning buildings and compiling these as-built drawings and getting those plans approved by council for owners, along with the occupation certificates for these properties. I don't see anything related to that. It could be a specific case in terms of the IPOW, but I think the work we see that needs to happen across the board in the country, we work nationally with all the buildings that need to get energy performance certificates and then approved plans that is demanded when properties are transferred. We get to work with all sorts of buildings to solve these problems for owners. But how is there any allowance for that in the IPOW? Should there be allowance for that in the IPOW?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Swanepoel. Panel, can I allow you to respond on the query posed on the issue of as-built drawings of occupation certificates. President, am I muted?
Sorry, you can take others. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the query from Mr. Swanepoel relates to as-built plans. These are drawings of existing structures which he did not design from inception. So this is something he finds on site. Can he now take not quite the responsibility in terms of authorship, but can he now use that as life experience, or can he be recognized to do such work? Mr. Decker and Mr. Pascu.
Thanks, Chair. I think that the LSD committee, where we came to as-builts, has made a thing, because as-builts are basically recording of existing structures and not where you go through the whole design process from inception, etc. We regarded that not as part of, let's say, your portfolio of experience, as you just document what is already there. I think Mr. Bastu and Mr. Govender can also expand on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Decker. Mr. Govender.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So I'd just like to point out the IDoW is not, to answer the query, I'll answer the query in this format. The IDoW is not the founding document for architecture professionals in South Africa. It's the Act. And the Act specifically states that for a person to be registered and recognized as a professional, one has to be assessed. One's capabilities has to be assessed. And those capabilities are assessed against a standard, and those standards are now the educational qualification. So a registered professional will be allowed to undertake work, recognized and approved by SACAP to undertake work based on the education and training. So unless the as-built was part of the education and training through an ALS, it is unlikely that one can call that one's own experience, because it's about designing from first principles and not taking what has been there and now recording it. So when we look from the Act point of view, that as-built does not constitute any education and training towards that experience for taking a building from scratch to completion. I hope that answers, Chair, or contributes to the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Govender. Mr. Pascu.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I think I concur with Mr. Govender that work submitted has to be assessed against the standard, but we are hearing what the RPs are saying regarding as-built drawings, and maybe we will discuss this with the IDoW committee to see how we can then include this in the new revised document. However, we cannot give RPs permission to do a building typology if they have done a as-built drawing, because that's not demonstrating their capabilities. But we will look into this and then see how we can factor it into the new revised IDoW.
Thank you, Mr. Pascu. I think Mr. Swanepoel has a valid point. It's worthy the suggestion that we look into competencies relating to as-built plans, because in practice, this is bread and butter for other businesses. So we have to look into how they are accommodated in IDoW so that they aren't limited or restricted from trading freely. Okay, the next person we'll be looking at is Wena Senekal. If we can have your concern.
Yes, can you hear me? Morning,
yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of things is okay, my submission was done incorrectly because I didn't have the stamp on it, so it took me quite a while actually to get my plans, and then I resubmitted it all. Thank you. And there were times when I actually screamed and did nasty emails to Kimberly, and I even apologized. But it's very frustrating. And the thing from us as professionals, because when and this got nothing to do with anyone, but like when in our industry, timing and precision is important. So when someone tells me, listen, yeah, your application is going to be done in 2 weeks, okay? In my world, then I expect 2 weeks. I even sometimes send emails to clients to say, listen, this process will be finalized in 2 weeks' time, okay? And that's now 3 months later. So at the same time, I understand the whole thing with SACAP is behind everything. But if SACAP tells me, listen, it's going to take me 6 months, then I know how to structure my life and my business for the next 6 months. But at this point in time, it's just like I keep on being extended next week and next week and next week. And once again, I understand the complication, but from a business point of view, it's not very professional to tell people something it's going to happen and it doesn't happen that way. I can understand if it happens once or twice even, but when it becomes 3-4 times, it becomes very unprofessional. One thing that I would suggest though to SACAP is because of all these applications, I think one of the main concerns is there's a lot of draftsmen, technologists that do dwellings, double stories, and like in my case, I do complex dwellings. I've got clients that high-end clients. So suddenly I've got a double-story dwelling, and we're already in the building process. Now the client wants to go a basement down. Okay, so are we getting to a complex drawing three stories? Now, what do I tell my clients? Sorry, sir, I can't draw your house anymore because I'm not qualified to do that. But I have done it. I have submitted all these things. But I think if dwellings, number one, would actually just be get preference in the system just for the first lot. Just tell people, listen, these guys, they can do dwellings just to get the general public going. I'm not talking about knowing commercial and stuff. That's also important. But I think the main part is the double-story or 3-story complex drawings. Okay, the other thing is SACAP, originally they told us we can continue to submit once we've done our IDoW application, and there was lots of confusion because we got an email from SACAP, yes, we can continue, and then the council said no, we cannot. Okay, education. Okay, education is not available in South Africa for us to progress. We can only progress by working under another person, but it's not always possible because of they've got their own practices, and we've got our own businesses. So yeah, education in South Africa regarding architecture is not. I got your comment from Cape Town University, but the fact is there's nothing available for us to progress in our education. Yeah, I've got a lot of things, but okay. Resubmit. Okay. Obviously, then some of these things we had to submit under a friend's name because the project started quite a while ago. Then there's complications for the client. They've paid deposits, and things just didn't happen in time. Now we can't submit because the clients obviously took a long time. But I've taken his money, I've done the work, but I can't submit in the system. So it's just, it makes it very difficult and very unprofessional. Like, yeah, it's like I'm expecting anytime a phone call from a lawyer to say, listen, we're going to sue you because you're not doing your work. But anyway, I've got a lot of things, but this is the main core of issues at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Senecal, firstly for congratulating SACAP for having done this LSD assessments. And in your case, yours process has gone through and you've received the outcome. So that's great news for Kimberly and others who are working tirelessly in the background. The issue of dwellings, simple double-story single dwelling unit. and the terminology thereof. I think it's why we are here today. We are here to review IDoW as a whole. We're here to review the terms, the various building types, because we find it's difficult for local municipalities to actually enforce. Say now you have a simple double story, a client wants a triple story structure, and you've been exempted only simple double story. Now you are restricted. So how we've been doing currently the exemption, we are granting you exemption based on the work presented, the POE, based on the drawing. So if your drawing is triple story, it's complex, it's got mechanical or artificial intelligence or anything like that, we'll note it in your approval certificate that it's a complex design. So your exemption is as per your submission. So the issue of terminology and dwellings, we are looking into it, hence this review. Education in South Africa and progression for Mr. Senecal, it's noted. Ronalda also brought it up earlier that she's struggling to progress or study forward. So we'll raise that issue with the education committee and find ways or offerings that can assist our architects to progress in terms of their training and education. Mr. Pascu, I see your hand is up.
Chair, I think you have covered most of what I wanted to say. But just to reassure our RPs that we have streamlined our processes now, and we are going much faster in processing the applications. And in terms of double-story dwellings, as you had indicated, that we are now approving based on what you submit. So if you submitted a three-story building, we are granting that authorization to continue doing that work. So, so we have improved our systems a lot. We face challenges. We also face some challenges where applications take a long time to process because we had an instance where some 1,500 drawings. Obviously that will take 2 or 3 for us to process. So we then refer that back to the client. Listen, we only want 1 drawing or the best of 5 or whichever. So we face lots of challenges in processing applications. However, we have from our side, we have streamlined the process and we are moving much faster. And in terms of today's meeting is how can we improve the IDoW and in terms of the additional typologies that we have identified and you may have identified. This is why we are here today. And he's saying that later on you would see done by Mr. Frans Dekker, where you would then realize that there are a number of permutations in terms of building typologies that are not there in the current IDoW. So we are hearing you in terms of the promise we made a year ago that we will review the IDoW on a yearly basis. And this is what we are doing today. We are here to listen to you and see how we can best improve the IDoW document and all the associated systems related to that. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pascu. Thank you for realigning this meeting to why we are really here today. And I note a lot of the participants are raising issues with their experience in terms of applying for LSD or administration issues within SACEP. We can note these, but I would also appeal to our participants, our 500 participants, to focus, purely on the core issue at hand today. How best can we improve IDoW? What needs to be added? What's missing in our current IDoW? Earlier, there was a suggestion that we need to include as-built. You know, that's a worthy suggestion. So we need similar, we note the concerns, frustrations, and some are despondent, but let's try and focus our discussion towards improving IDoW. Okay, the next person on the screen is Mr. Peter Whitehouse. The floor is yours, Mr. Whitehouse.
All right, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a senior technologist. I've been practicing for 33 years, and I've done probably in the region of about 5,000 buildings. I call it a small practice. You might not think that, and what I've done in terms over the years, I've probably done 3,000 or 4,000 homes, petrol stations, supermarkets, bottle stores, pick and pays, food lover markets, etc. I can go on. You know, you go through what it is, and you then ask yourself the question, why? Why are we going backwards? If I look at what the government has done and turned this country around into a new constitution, I believe that obviously the council is taking us backwards. The reality of it is, why did it go forwards? Why did it go back more? Well, these are my opinions. My opinion is, when I started, I was told that I was a draftsman and I would only be able to do up to 500 square meters of any project, and that was my limitation. I knew that at the outset when I was in my studies, and I entered in the profession on that way. Because there was a shortage of architects at the time, we then, how can I say, got given an opportunity to educate ourselves per se, and to learn the ways of the industry, to grow our knowledge and our wisdom based on that. Now, if I look at the first identification of works that you guys started bringing out, which I call the modern world's way of analyzing things, and that's what I do believe the attitude of the current government has done in terms of our constitution of this country. They haven't gone back and copy-pasted the British system. And for unknown reasons, I do believe that the council has gone backwards, is adopting the British system, and you will look at the academic structure of the South African universities. It's all based on the British system. I know the American system is deemed to be the modern world, and yes, you get degrees and diplomas there for all sorts, including bartending. The reality of the situation is, I do believe that probably the Institute of Architects and its members have challenged SACAP, and they're basically taking us back to being draftsmen and giving us our limitation of work. And as far as I'm concerned, it's prejudicing. It's discrimination. It's wrong. And, you know, making little subtle comments relating to some of the people that I've heard before, you know, your plans weren't stamped, they weren't approved, etc. I can assure you that every plan that I've ever done has been stamped, it's approved. I've got digital files of 2D files going back 22 years, 3D files going back 13 years, every job, every project that I've ever done. And for a body like you to come and tell me that I can't do something at age 61 and I must go back to school is just so wrong. So my questions are relevant to it is this: why are we going backwards, in my opinion? And the second question I have relevant to this is, why do we look to the British system of doing things? What makes us do that? Is it just simply because clever academics, legal academics, are physically forcing us coming back, that we really only have two categories in this country? You're a draftsman and you're an architect, and there's nothing in between. And that would be all well and good if we were all walking out of university or before we started studying at technicons or universities, and we're told that at the outset. But you can't go back to someone hypothetically at age 61 and say, go start again. And to me, that is what I say. And I'd obviously like some form of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. I think for me, I would like to understand your statement. How are we going backwards? I mean, this review is inclusive. You are given an opportunity to raise or your concern in terms of how this IDoW is developed. You are further saying when you first started working, you were limited as a draftsman to 500 square meters. And you are now in your 60s, further limited to trade freely. And you've noted the first IDoW, and I'm struggling to understand how are you being limited? How are you being restricted?
Okay, if I can ask basically the first identification of works that it is, would you not agree with me is completely different to what it is now?
Correct.
And the reason for that is you practice within your capacity and best you know what you're doing before you start doing something. And if you're competent enough, you can do it. And the bottom line relevant to it is exactly what it is. We learn what to do. We know we can run comrades, and some of us don't succeed. And we try.
Yeah.
The bottom line relevant to the first preservation of works attended to that, as far as I'm concerned, was done in a system where if you did it with the right team and the right professional teams, and likewise with your list of, if I can call building types that you've got listed for discussion today, it's very typical. It's not what I think, it's also what the team thinks, and you work with a professional team. And in some structures, in some buildings, and that the engineer actually is probably the bigger principal on the project, because some of the items relate to firefighting equipment, sprinkler systems, water reservoirs, etc. And it goes all the way through to mechanical engineers. And whilst you can analyze buildings and structures and try and get categories and see if I can or can't do a gym can be categorized into 50 different categories, in a sense, from Pilates to aerobics to a weight gym to a gymnasium where people actually have horse and rings and you know, the reality, it's a multi-purpose facility. Oh, it does have change rooms, it has to have showers, it has to, it's not, it's about your tenant. The tenant doesn't want change rooms, doesn't want it. And the reality is some offer saunas, gyms and change rooms. It's a sports facility. The sports facilities go into your stadiums, to sports clubs. Sports clubs go into bars, liquor licenses into restaurants, restaurants into tables. You know, all these little things relevant. One leads into the other, but yet you want to say, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. You can do that. You can do this. And I'm saying, but why? The initial preservation of works, if you've got the right people and the right things, and you believe that you can do it, it's fine. What the original legislation we had in this country when I was obviously a youngster, where we were limited to 500 square meters. I could do 500 square meters of anything. I wasn't limited to what I could do. So I can go and do a 500 square meter restaurant. I could do a 500 square meter shopping center. I know it's tiny, but the reality of the situation, that's how we made do. And I learned and I learned. And yes, I've done game lodges, I've done game reserves. You know, it's a situation there where you how does that come about? No one educated me. I went along, I did it myself. I researched it. I made sure that my hospital, my clinic could work.
Yes.
So, you know, your emergency room is next to your high care, your wards out. It's a sausage machine.
Peter.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt and interject. Quick one. Have you applied for LSD, RPL, or special consent?
I have written to you 6-7 months ago, and I haven't received a reply, except that
Did you apply for it?
You acknowledged receipt of my letter or my response.
Application.
Yes, just a response. But I'm going to
Did
only
you
say,
send the application?
I can only say to you, but also the demand of you, your counsel of me is mistrust, and you do not trust people that you have done the design. What I can tell you now, I've got digital 3D designs, models, everything, all done by me personally, not by some other. Not
Peter, let me allow the other panel to speak. Colleagues, I know we are frustrated, we are despondent, we are emotional.
Prove to you who I am.
Yeah.
Why don't you
I
come and
know. Yes, Peter, listen, I think your circumstance is unique again, but again, I'm going to appeal. We have 500 participants and we're trying to encompass as many of our participants as much as possible. I've noted your concern, Mr. Whitehouse, and you are raising valid points, but I'm going to appeal to you again, apply for special consent and RPL. You've done quite a number of buildings, apply for RPL.
No, I know, but I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to go through that process. But the reality of what your needs are to do that is ridiculous, to say the least. And I must be honest. You know, the reality is I have a pre-plan for everything I've done. I've done no illegal structures. You know, I can turn around and give you advice based on these as-built drawings. As far as I'm concerned, if those are illegal structures, those people shouldn't be able to do as-built plans. And these are my colleagues I'm putting down. The reason being is there are people out there that deliberately do that so they don't pay design fees, that don't pay for us who are competent to do that, including that man who does the as-built drawings. He actually knows more. But I would rather almost call upon every senior technologist to say, guys, it's about time that we had a sit-in against the
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Pascu, Mr. Governor, and Councillor Moideen in that order, please respond.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I would just say, listen, we hearing the RPs, we feel for them, we feel for their frustrations. However, when we look at the development of the IDoW, there are many timelines, you know, in how the IDoW progressed. So I'm not going to discuss all of the timelines, but in all of the timelines, there was consultation processes with the registered professionals, with practice, with the ALSs, with the Competitions Commission, with the Council of the Built Environment, and various other stakeholders. And this is why we are here today. We asking a simple question, you know, how can we improve this IDoW document? We made a promise that we will review this document. And in terms of the first IDoW, the first IDoW was never approved. It was never an approved document. It was actually rejected by the Competitions Commission on the basis that they were, you know, that they were square meters in the document together with the 2 floors and 3 floors. And the Commission couldn't understand the relationship between 501 and 2000 and 2001 and half a toilet and 3/4 of a toilet. Therefore, when in 2014, the document got rewritten, you know, based on a different criteria, you know, that document was then presented, you know, and approved by the Competitions Commission. And one of the requirements from the Competitions Commission that we review the document on an annual basis to see what's working and what's not working. And we hear the RPs, we hear all of the stakeholders. So there are multiple stakeholders that we are engaging with. Make sure that we improve the document, and to say that we are, I think it's sad that if we believe that we are going backward. And in terms of, there's 2 things that we need to understand. Now, when the IDoW was approved in 2021, we clearly stated that it is a document that is going forward, meaning that the newly registered, newly qualified will automatically align to the new IDoW because of a set of criteria that has been laid on by the NQF, CHE, and all other statutory regulatory bodies that feed into the system. However, those that were already in practice, we then had to introduce a system or a mechanism that will allow the registered professionals to continue to do the work that they were doing. So if you're doing airports and skyscrapers and other building typologies, if you submit your portfolio of evidence demonstrating that you have been doing this, you will not be restricted. You will continue to do that kind of work. So I'm actually concerned when we hear the statements that we are limiting and restricting registered professionals from doing their work. However, we are hearing you. You know, we feel for the professionals, and we will apply our mind. But we have streamlined our systems to make it to make sure that we are not exclusionary in whatever we do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pascu. Mr. Governor.
Thank you, Chair. To speak specifically on why the IDoW has changed from 500 square meters, maybe it's a good time to point out to the RPs or the attendees that the initial or the 2007 IDoW, which was quite clear, explicit, had the square meterage and had the various building types, that application or work reservation was rejected or challenged, and the Competition Commission actually stepped in and they wanted to know what's the difference between a 500 and a 501 square meter building. So what that means is, according to the laws of the country, that application of the identification of works was actually anti-competitive. And in 2014, the IDoW shifted from arbitrary square meterage to building complexity and competency, which is aligned to the Architectural Act 44 of 2000, which brought in the various categories, PADs, PATs, senior techs, and professional architects. So I'd just like to highlight to the attendees and the RPs that this identification of works, as Mr. Baus has pointed out, is aligned to the Higher Education Qualification Sub-Framework. It's been approved by the Council of Higher Education, the qualifications, the ALSs that can undertake those things. We are aligned, SACAP is a signatory of the Canberra Accord. So anything and everything that we do is aligned to international norms and standards, as well as the fact that the identification of works as is provides for migration, opens up the opportunity for anybody to prove their capabilities, demonstrate the capabilities, so they can be registered in higher categories or be given certain exemptions. And unfortunately, if we have not followed the timelines which were extended for LSD applications, we are now restricting ourselves. So the only way to move forward without restricting ourselves is to do a special consent, or in the case of Mr. Whitehouse, to rather do the RPL, so that you can do all those other building types unhindered. And if RPL may not be relevant for all the building types, then obviously special consent for the building type. So I think, there's a lot of missing information that we are speaking from, or attendees do not have, and it's in the webinars and it's in the various documents. And we are happy to share that as well, but we must be mindful that we're not going backwards, we're progressing, we're leading the way, as well as the fact that we are not restricting anybody. Whatever you've been doing, if you've submitted your evidence and you've got exemption, you can continue. If you don't have exemption through LSD, get an exemption, get the special consent or RPL, and you can continue unrestricted. But if we do not do those things, the newly qualified people are going to be going ahead of us, and we're going to be restricting ourselves to what they can do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Councillor Moideen, then we'll move to the next participant.
Thank you, sir. Whatever I wanted to say was said. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so in terms of time, we are going to allow participants and hear as much as we can in terms of meaningful contributions to IDoW. And then we'll allow Mr. Decker to go through the proposed building types categories, which are based on the findings of the LSD assessments done by the panel. So we'll allow as many participants, there's 500 in attendance, but there's also Q&As, which I would like to go through. But perhaps let's allow the ones who've been allowed into the session. San Elna Besta, the floor is yours. Suelna, you are muted. Besta, you can voice your concern or contribution to IDoW. Suelna, okay, it seems she's muted. We'll proceed to Mr. Ray Ramlal. The floor is yours, sir.
Comrade Wuzipalani, thank you very much. And morning to the panel. I just want to mention I'm Ray Ramlal. I'm represented through the stakeholder at PACE in KZN. I come on to this discussion being privileged to be part of a session that was held 2 days ago as the first session by SETAB, and I just want to compliment, Lucy, your team. I also want to compliment, the LSD committee, Daneshwar, Mohammed, Kevin, and Franz Decker for the wonderful job you guys are doing. Lucy, I made note of what you said earlier on, and
Mr. Ramlal, your audio is not quite clear.
I just want to reiterate on some of your comments you mentioned here that the LSD was a new option.
Okay. Can anyone hear Mr. Ramlal?
Not clearly, Chair, not clearly.
Okay, all right. Am I any clearer now?
You keep fading, Mr. Ramlal.
I am trying. All right, let's just try. I just want to reiterate on some of the comments made earlier, Comrade Lucy, that the LSD, that is a new offering, and one would experience teething problems. We as, voluntary associations have acknowledged that, yes, SECAB is trying its best to basically accommodate, and this session is being, started today to accommodate individual professionals. So yes, I think the point that I want to raise here is we would like SECAB to look at a possibility that for those members who are putting the applications and are not able to receive approved plans, it is because when the LSD started, it was during COVID-19, and the municipalities' doors were not opened, and that was going on. And up until today, the doors are never open. It is very difficult for professionals to receive approved plans. I would like SECAB to look into a situation when professionals make applications for LSD and on a particular project, allow them to basically put in an affidavit, because if they've definitely done the job, for them signing an affidavit should not be a problem, because we must look at the municipalities are having problems. They are paid staff at municipalities. They don't care about the professionals and the public. They just getting salaried every day. The doors are never open. Professionals cannot get approved plans, yet we have limited time to submit the required documents for LSD applications. I'm sure SECAB can look into this, allow the professionals to at least put in an affidavit and give them at least 2 years to basically, when it's possible to get approved plans, provide them, because, you say you have teething problems, but the country is going on a downslide because, I was listening to a wonderful Peter Whitehouse who mentioned, that there is a shortage of architects. Now, the draftsmen, technologists, senior technologists are the experienced architectural muscle that shouldn't be excluded. And they would actually bring in, the increase of the country's population and job creation. South Africa at the moment is one of the lowest with unemployment. So please, the guys are, the LSD volunteer team, you guys are doing very well. I think look at the merits of the situation. I'm Ray, I started this Freedom Architects Consulting Empowerment, and I'm sure I can confirm that SECAB to date is on par and is assisting the industry very well and is in line. But at the same time, whilst you're having teething problems, when you get fully paid municipality workers who don't care about professionals and the public, SECAB is listening to us. we appeal to you to at least ask the guys to provide an affidavit where there is difficulties like this. Now, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ramlal. Mr. Ramlal, there, if it wasn't clear for the other participants, is indicating the issue of approved plans as a requirement to be exempted or granted exemption when applying for LSD. And he further notes that there may be perhaps a relaxation of requirement to at least say an affidavit is submitted in the case where approved plans are not submitted. We've noted this issue. It was raised earlier that approved plans are a concern for those who have applied for LSD assessments. I'm going to move along because Mr. Ramlal, the issue of approved plans we've raised and it will be discussed by committee, IDoW committee, and see how best this can be relaxed, and only after council approves that recommendation. So I thank you for having congratulated SACEP for the engagement. The issue of approved plans and affidavits will be discussed further. Colleagues, I'm not making any commitments there. I'm saying this issue will be discussed. Okay, I'm going to allow Mr. Ramlal, I'm going to proceed and allow Ulrich Sols to speak and voice his issues relating to IDoW.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Morning to everyone in the RPs. First of all, the IDoW was never a surprise to anyone. I saw it coming in 2015. Yes, I was fortunate enough to get myself to get a master's. I'm waiting for my PP exam results for the 30th of June to come out. But I feel for people where this industry was their bread and butter, and all of a sudden they've been crippled by this new IDoW. I want to put this in the right context so I'm not being misunderstood. The IDoW, yes, it's there now and we need to adhere to it because it's also part of the code of conduct as professionals must adhere to. And one that is doing it outside that scope will be found guilty by law. Now, I think there's a better way, or this is just my suggestion, how we can assist those that is falling short from this IDoW. Now, not so long ago, we had a very nice seminar on transformation. Okay. Now, do we really address transformation through this process? Why couldn't the IDoW make provision for the local municipalities, BCO and plan examiners to give letters, just like they did in the past when SACEP started with the first president of Malcolm Campbell, where there's lots of people that have status of registrations and qualified for it because of grandpa clause status was given to them when SACEP came into existence. But they can do that work now, but they got no formal qualification. But they've got a SACEP number that says they're in that category. So because your BCO and your plan examiner of your region where you work in, they all know you're capable of doing the work, but now this thing is coming out, you must apply for it. I think it's just unnecessary red tape we're causing for ourselves in a country with a struggling economy and so forth. So that is the one thing that we can look at and sorting things out. And then my next question is, why? I understand BCOs are also registering now with SACEP, but this is the question now. People cannot do work in a certain category, but the people approving the plan is not qualified to approve a plan to the category. How does that work? That is all from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Sauls. So your concern raised is relating to transformation through IDoW.
Yes.
and the issue of you raise the issue of the OPA clause and the status of registration, and how you can, why should you not be allowed to proceed if you've been given that status of registration that allows you to proceed? Now, and it seems we are making it difficult for you as an RP to practice, because now all the PCOs, plan examiners in your region, they know you can do this type of plan. However, SACEP is coming forth and saying, hold on, you're not competent to do that bolding type. And you are saying the industry or the profession is not getting transformed. Now, my concern is, as a regulator, I represent the architectural profession, but my number one mandate is to protect the public. And through that, I have to make sure that the profession I regulate, the people who are practicing are competent. And the only way I can satisfy that is to assess and make sure you are competent. As a draftsperson, how do I know you can do a simple double story? Based on the plans you've done in the past, based on peer review. And I note the frustration from all the participants. Everyone is despondent because it's like we are adding it's an added weight over and above CPD submission, annual fees, registration. But this is a requirement. I mean, this is a requirement. We've put means in place, measures in place to transform this profession. You can be upgraded. You can move from senior tech to professional architect. I've seen it. You can move from draftsperson to technologist and so forth. You can be exempted to doing simple double-story single dwelling units. So those means are in place. And I think the issue you are raising about the OPA clause, perhaps it needs to be revisited. And having others been given status of registration. We are looking into issuing certificates through Privy Seal, so that when you go to municipalities and submit plans, you've got your certificate indicating that you are competent to do these types of buildings that fall outside your scope or your identified work. There may be issues and gaps in terms of enforcement at BCO level or municipality level. However, this is the approach going forth, how we as SACEP want to regulate and ensure that the profession is well regulated and we fulfill our statutory mandate. So, Mr. Souls, I noted your concerns, and I think a plus for us here is looking at the status of registration and how best we can align that to the certificates. Panel, if you have anything to say in response to Mr. Souls, I think we can, Councillor Moidin.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to tell Mr. Souls about the municipality, that all municipal staff working with building plans, it is into law now that they must be registered with SACEP. That's point number one. Point number two, when a plan examiner haven't got the quality, as Mr. Souls said, they haven't got the qualifications or whatever, he does not work alone. Someone else take responsibility for that plan. Like the BCO would sign off the plan, and then you've got the various departments, like a traffic engineer would sign off anything on traffic, and the health department will sign off. anything on health, and so the fire department. It is not that the person hasn't got the education, whatever, there's various, and when it comes to engineer, the engineer must take responsibility of it to indemnify that work. It is not that easy that to say that a plan examiner hasn't got the qualifications. There's a whole process that a plan goes through. If Mr. Sold understand it right, he must go and find out the municipality. What is the process in place? But I can guarantee you it's all qualified, competent people signing off. It's not just one person going through your plan, it goes through various departments. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Moedin. Mr. Pascu, then.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on one or two points that Mr. Soul has made. Firstly, we want to congratulate Mr. Soul, Mr. Eldridge, for obtaining his masters, and hopefully he gets his professional status shortly, and he becomes a model to other registered professionals in the industry. And I just want to touch on the point, a better way to assist those who are falling short. I think that's a very important statement that you have made. However, SACEP, together with the voluntary association, with the voluntary associations, have been doing this and trying to assist the RPs in actually putting together an LSD application. We had several engagements, online and offline and in-face to actually try and assist them. But we will take note of this again, and we will go back and see, going forward, how we can assist those who are falling short or failing to put together an application. And in terms of the new IDoW, we will also try to see how we can engage more constructively so that our RPs understand the IDoW and understand all other processes that we have put in place. And in terms of transformation, I think SACEP has been addressing this issue on an ongoing basis. And on completion of the LSD application, there will be other analysis that will be coming out of this. And I'm sure that the council will then look at this report that we provide with them. And from there, they would then determine what steps need to be taken to rectify the imbalances of the past. In terms of unnecessary red tape, I think we won't touch bases on that, just on those 2 points, better way to assist the RPs. Let's see how we can take this forward. Thank you for your Mr. Eldridge. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pascu. Colleagues, we are going to allow these queries until around 12, then we'll allow Mr. Decker to talk us through the various other building types. I think, Mr. Sowles, you've been answered there. I see your mic is open.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sowles. Mr. Brandon Brown, can we now hear your query?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And again, I commend everyone involved with this progress. I do believe it is well improved. There are still stepping stones over the years, but I've been watching it as we're working. So I greatly thank you for your current staff as well. Okay, so I've got the topic before this was very, very valid. I'll come back to that in the second. I've only got two. The first one is a direct impact on myself, which I would like the panel just to put a picture together, right? 25 years in the industry, half of it was abroad. I've acquired substantial information, which I brought back to the country. I found myself contracting for big corporate architectural firms, which I'm not going to mention, to educate and to mentor them in offices, right? I contracted myself. I'm currently registered as a professional senior architectural technologist. Then I don't have staff. I've been single-handedly doing everything myself, right? So what has happened is, on my coming back, I locked myself in with big developers and so on. They downturn me, no problem. Now, it took me years to show clients that, you know, I am that person, right, to entrust in me. And it's not overnight. It's not a 1-year process. It's not a 2-year process. It's not even a 3-year process. So I found myself now in a position whereby my client has entrusted his whole portfolio on me, right? And I'm speaking over a period of 8 years, right? So with that being said, I cannot do the small items anymore. My bread and butter is apartment developments, okay? What has happened is I have signed up and he's entrusted me with his portfolio like 5 years ago already. So we've got projects in council, which is running through town planning. It's, you know, going through all the rigmarole as it is normally. And alongside that, SACAP is developing the IDoW and, you know, it's progressing. But I found myself now in a situation whereby I came to a point, submitted my portfolio from beginning to the very end with pictures, painted buildings, and I couldn't just submit one, I submitted a few to show that, you know, this is where I am. And then there was a small section on the form which asked me to tick off the stages, the work stages, which I would like to be, you know, to continue on. And after all the excitement, I ticked off 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.1, 4.2 up until 6, because that is what I've been doing. My application came back saying I've only been granted up until 4.1. So that was a huge, I'm still overwhelmed by the fact. I kindly phoned Kimberly and I said, listen, what is, you know, it was sent back. She also understood it. It was sent back for review. I haven't read a response. 6 is where I need to be because I've locked myself in years back, 4 years back into projects. 4 developments are waiting, which is consisting of 250 units. That's over 4 developments. So at what point do I tell my client is standing at retirement, remember? He's entrusting his whole property portfolio on me. At what point do I tell him that I can only submit plans after all these years of coming back, educating, bringing back to the country? He's entrusted in me. At what point do I tell him that I can only submit plans and not run the project? These developers is not going to look for someone to take the project to site and give him a turnkey project. So he's at retirement. I've only got like a few years left in retirement, which is like 15 years. It's short, relatively speaking. At what point do I do that? I cannot do that. It's hurting the industry. There's so many people in the grapevine that I'm really asking for it to be reviewed properly, because it's not going to be a challenge for me. It's going to be a challenge for any other person in my position, right? That is a huge setback because I've submitted buildings to its finished painted, the last bit. But at what point do I retract myself? I cannot do that. So I would like SACAP and the panel to really look at that aspect in terms of the review process for what has been requested from me. The second one is but it affects someone else. I don't know if that aspect has been covered, but that is my second point. Do you touch it? Do you touch
sorry,
it?
Mr. Brown, I missed your second point. I only got the gist of the first one. Can you repeat the second one?
Second one, it doesn't affect me directly, but it's affecting people in the industry. At what point, because of the BCOs is also a question in the plans examiners. Let's say you're entitled to a single-story building. You are being approached that from the client that they would like a double story, but you cannot do that double story and it gets blocked in council.
Okay. Thank you, Brendan. I think I got the gist of that. I'm going to allow Mr. Governor to respond. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Brendan, for that query. It is difficult. So what I would suggest, I would really look at, appealing or asking appealing the LSD application as to why you weren't successful up to stage 6. Look at fixing that. And if that's not possible or not successful, I would also look at doing the special consent route, or getting approval from SACAP, finding out how we can get the approval till stage 6, because that's very important so you can continue. And another alternative is to look at doing a section 26 4. The Act allows for you as a person to JV or work under somebody else, or apportion the work to somebody else who's going to take responsibility for up to stage 6. So you don't necessarily need to hand over or walk away from the work. So I think there is a way to work around this. And unfortunately, we at the situation where the various acts and constitutional imperatives need to be enforced and implemented, and there are these real-time impacts, but there are mechanisms in place to make sure that you're not restricted. So I would look at 26.4, doing a special consent, then appealing your outcome of your LSD application with the necessary proof or evidence that's required to allow you for stage 6 exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavender. I think what we need to, the message we need to send out to our participants today is the outcome of the LSD assessments is based on the evidence presented. So if you've not utilized a construction contract to manage stage 5 and 6 or after tender, or there isn't any form of other evidence like site meetings, practical completion certificate, final certificate, progress payments, any form of evidence that suggests you were involved with stage 5 and 6, occupation certificates, any evidence that suggests, because I can tell you now, it's very difficult for us to say, okay, you've sent images, but what other evidence? How are we going to assess your competency if we can't tell whether you've managed as a principal or as a architect on the project? What was your role? What evidence are you giving me to say, okay, you can be granted exemption up to stage 5 and 6? I think that's the position. Mr. Decker?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I also just want to remind people, especially those that were registered between 2000 and 2006, before it became compulsory to be registered, that at that stage, you were not required to go and write the practice exam, especially paper 2. So if you want to do stage 4.2 to 6 and you do not have any evidence or did not submit any evidence to the LSD committee, I think the other route is just to go and apply and write the PPE exam. And once you've passed paper 1 and 2, you will automatically be allowed to do up to stage 6 for anything that you are cleared to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Colleagues, we seem to be having quite a number of hands on the screen, which I'm going to give everyone an opportunity because this is an inclusive process and we want to make sure that everyone is heard. So I'm going to request that perhaps you are given a limited time to focus only on the points you want to raise, so that we give everyone at least an opportunity to have had said something by the end of today. So Elna Bester, if you can limit your concerns to at least a minute or so we can allow the others to speak. Elna?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think everything on my side have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move along
you.
to Leroy Arendse.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hi, thank you very much for this engagement. There is a couple of things I want to address, but I'll just address one item so we can give everyone a chance. In terms of Board Notice 27 of 2021, which talks about the different categories of registrations and their competencies, in particular, the difference between the senior architectural technologists and the architects. And I'm going to give an example of a particular project which I wanted to tender for, but unfortunately I couldn't. And that was the repairs and renovations to a prison. I mean, not to a prison, sorry, to a police station. And perhaps it's something that you guys can have a look at with all the different categories and all the different building typologies, is that we look at repairs and renovations. For instance, the board notice says that as a senior technologist, we cannot do it. That work is reserved for architects. And basically saying that we do not have the competencies in architectural design, context and urban relationships, as well as architectural history, theory, and precedent. But if you're looking at the repairs and renovations project, 10 to 1, you're not going to expand on the building, especially when you're looking at government projects. When they do R&Rs, they're not expanding on the building, they're literally just repairing the building. Do we need to look at the architectural design? Is it something that, in terms of repairs and renovations, is it a competency that's required, as well as architectural history, theory, and precedent? Is it a competency that's required for R&R, as well as context and urban relationships? A building is there, we might replace a roof because the roof is leaking, or the floor tiles need to be changed, building needs to be repainted, and so forth. So that's just something that when we look at the IDoW and further develop it, if we can slot in a category of repairs and renovations, that's just an idea from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Arendse. And I think you're raising a very worthy point because in the current IDoW 27 of 2021, issues such as as-built plans, repairs and renovations, alterations, refurbishments, those have not been clearly articulated. And I think in this review, we need to look into it, because it's mind-boggling how a senior architectural technologist cannot tender for repairs and renovation to an existing roof. Mr. Govender?
Thank you, Chair. If we look at the current IDoW on page 23, there is a section on existing buildings. And they've got there a very simple matrix that says, if you're doing repairs and maintenance, which is basic repairs and superficial upkeep to existing buildings, spot fixing only, no large-scale removal of finishes, little, no design work. And then it goes down, it starts off at that point, and then it goes down to where major changes are required. So as an RP, one would be required to evaluate what level of repairs and maintenance we are doing, and thereafter the complexity will be ascribed. So it is covered in the IDoW, and if we're going to, for example, now repair and remove and do a lot of stuff, then the complexity increases, and that's when the senior tech may not be allowed to undertake that work. But if it's so one has to clearly read the IDoW. It's all the information there minus the as-builts, but repairs and maintenance is covered with varying degrees of involvement, from spot fixing all the way to major structural changes. I'd just like to bring that to everyone's attention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. I think what's coming forth today, similarly to yesterday, it seems there may be a need for an overview of IDoW because there's some, what we also noted from our participants yesterday is people don't read the policy document and they make assumptions. So we've noted that there might be a need to have an overview, a shortened version, which tells you exactly who gets to do what. All right, so thank you for those. I think Mr. Arendse has been answered. We'll move now to—
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
So if we say on our building plans, repairs and renovations to the police station, then the local authority would then have to accept it. Or are they just going to go down to the matrix where it says it's only for architects, and therefore no one else can do it? That is my concern when we do submit the plans to the local authority.
Yeah. Mr. Pascu? You are muted, Mr. Pascu.
Thank you, Chair. Just to answer the query regarding, renovations and alterations and repair work, I think you did indicate that we need to look at, rewording that part of that IDoW so that everyone is on the same page. But if we look at the IDoW, there is a section that speaks about about repairs and renovations, as Mr. Governor has indicated. So maybe we need to now move that to each category of registration, so it's recorded, under each category as to the extent of the renovation or the repair that can be undertaken. So something that we will take note of, and we will look at it when we are reviewing the IDoW. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to further clarify on the question that was just asked, the IDoW document does say where there's a confusion or nothing is clear or there's a problem, I'm just paraphrasing right now, that the matter should be referred to SACAP for a decision. So I would, in that case, if it's just repairs and renovations, motivate to the local authority. This is what the IDoW excerpt says. This is the chapter, this is the verse. Get it in writing from SACAP, because these are going to be things on an ongoing basis. And if it needs to be explicitly stated, maybe a codicil or a practice note or some kind of a circular should be sent out to local authorities. And as Mr. Basto is pointing out, we have that endorsement under each category of registration in the revised IDoW. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move along to Helen Nineba. Ms. Nineba, thank you.
Morning, my name is Helen Nineba. I'm from the Department of Public Works. Just from the government's point of view, we've scrutinized the documentation that was given. Just in general, I think we will formally respond and send all the queries in writing. But just in general, we wanted to highlight that there's some of the terminologies that's used that is not South African terminologies. For instance, a sheriff court or a court of session. Those are things that we don't have in South Africa, but we've got high courts, we've got civil courts and family courts, etc. So we will provide you with some comments on that. We've also noticed that some of the documentation, especially the tables and the complexity rating of Schedule 1 and 2, there's discrepancies between them. When you start comparing the matrices and the complexity levels and who, which category it can fall under. So just those two things that we wanted to highlight. And things like a prison is not, we don't refer to prisons anymore. We refer to them as correctional facilities. So it's just technical comments that we maybe have. Also, most of the government work that we do is, well, from a National Department of Public Works side, is complex buildings. We do get provincial government as well, like schools and hospitals. They don't necessarily fall under the same categories, but from our point of view, our buildings are falling in a very complex category. And that includes, for instance, all courts, not only certain courts, where in your documentation you refer to specific courts as not being complex. Yeah, so we will send that in writing so that you can reconsider or consider the comments that we've made. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nineba. Thank you for committing to taking this document to your government department so that we can internally within government have the document further reviewed. You've noted the issue of realigning terminologies to the South African context so that it's contextualized to our region. The issue of complexity rating and discrepancies, will greatly appreciate that if you can make those written comments submission from a government department. All right, the next person is okay, Mr. Pastu.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've covered, you know, all the issues that Helen has expressed, and I just want to thank Helen for her inputs, because this is the type of engagement we're actually looking for from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Is how do we fix our document? How do we identify the inconsistencies and how do we improve the document? So thank you, Helen, for actually highlighting these, and hopefully it will give guidance to our other RPs that are here today to the type of information we're looking for to best improve the IDoW. Thank you again, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. The next person is Ian Marshall. Ian, the floor is yours. You are muted. Okay, Ian Marshall. Okay, he's still muted. I'm moving along to Heini van Niekerk.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Heini van Niekerk, professional architect. I've got a couple of points. I'll keep it quick and short that I think could add as constructive feedback to the existing IDoW. The first one I'd like to highlight is just the description of the complexity levels within the document, footnote 27 of 21. So I think if there could just be either more refined or a better way of describing low complexity, medium complexity, and high complexity. It's causing confusion at the moment. If you really read into the words like one should. And I think that, especially in the residential sector, when you go to J6, dwelling units of complex design, at the moment it does read large complicated groupings and significant impact on the environments. My first thought on that was, you know what, anything that's got architectural guidelines, only architects and senior technologists. And it has come to light that that's not really the case. A house is a house. But I think that's one thing that we could elaborate on. And I mean, we only talk about J6. What if this gets slightly more complex in terms of other building typologies? So that's number one. Number two, that was the longest one. Number two is, I'm wondering if there's a way that the IDoW should address how the IDoW should address moving forward in terms of, look, it addresses individuals and how individuals, what they can do and should do, but nowhere does it really talk about companies. Now, you know, highest registration in the company, that's one way of doing it. But what I'm seeing at the moment is individuals, whether they work or not with companies, they just go, if they can't do the work at the moment, they just go to a friend of theirs that's a higher registration, and this guy just signs it off. They're not in the same town, they don't work together. It could be family, it could be an old friend that you studied with. That does not protect the public. So if I use a silly example, and it's not right to say it, but if I register free for all tomorrow and everybody just works under free for all, who takes responsibility, then everybody bypasses the IDoW. I can't put it in a better way for everyone to understand. Then number 3, there should be something that covers candidates. At the moment, it only covers the professionals, but I think it should be clear. Candidates working from home, again, working under a friend at a house, or under their registration. It's happening where we are. It happens every day. I think candidates should be addressed, or it should just be made very clear what they can and can't do under the scope of other professionals. You know, if they sit in the office with a professional, which is where they learn, I get that spot on, but that's not the case at the moment. And then another way that the IDoW could work is if there's a, you know, just like it's actually in the National Building Regulations. I'm not going to pull up here now, but just like engineers have to provide their EXA certificate and their proof of indemnity insurance, perhaps architectural professionals, doesn't matter at which level you are, that needs to be a council requirement. Because let's say you do use your friend somewhere in another town, it needs to be clear under whose name it is. I've seen drawings with 2 title blocks. I've seen drawings with, and I do a lot of scrutinies, so that's how I see these things. I see drawings with no names, no addresses, and it's just ways of bypassing the responsibility. That's what it comes down at the end of the day, because that's how you protect the public. Is at the end of, when something goes wrong, who is the responsible person? And if you go back to the title blocks, it's just shoddy, and you can see it's just different numbers. It gets hectic. So maybe that's a good requirement for council. Because if the indemnity insurance is there, and there's a lot of people that think they don't need indemnity insurance. But that's, and then the last one is there a way to BCOs is now with SACAP, this is my last point, so is all architectural professionals. But in almost every second council, there's a BCO in the public sector that draws plans in the private sector. And in small towns, this runs very quickly. And at the end of the day, they run the whole game. So they're running for the public, protecting them on council level and doing what a BCO needs to do. But on the sideline, they're competing with a private sector. And obviously people are going to use them because the illusion of being created, you're going to get my plans approved quicker. It's a very unfair advantage. So that's it. That's me, 5 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You raised about 5 points. The first relating to the description of complexity rating and definitions. Thank you for that. We're going to make our language simplify so it's understood to the man on the street. The language is going to be in such a manner that it's not misleading or maybe misused by others to further limit or restrict others from practicing, such as what we've seen with residential estates. IDoW for companies, it's a good suggestion, but it still needs to be aligned to the principle of the firm, because we've seen instances where companies are doing architectural work, but these aren't owned by architects. You find QSs, project managers, engineers, employing architects. And they run architectural projects, and these are QSs. So the issue of IDoW for companies needs to be looked into. Candidates, again, ideal for candidates, we need to align to the code of conduct. What can a candidate do really? Because as a candidate, you are meant to be in training, you are meant to be mentored. You aren't necessarily meant to be doing architectural work. You're not, well, you are supposed to be doing architectural work, but you're not supposed to be running a practice because you don't have the enough experience. You've not been tested yet. You are not professional. You cannot take full responsibility for the works on site as a candidate. So the code of conduct better talks to what a candidate can and cannot do. National Building Regulations Act, certificate and professional and indemnity, and how we can learn from that. Perhaps going forward, we can draw some lessons there. You identified competition between RPs and BCOs. And clearly, there's an unfair advantage for BCOs submitting plans because it would appear to everyone that they can get plans approved sooner. So that needs to be addressed so that there's the issue of unfair competition is looked into. All right, so those were the comments from Mr. Niker. Mr. Carpenter, I don't know if you wanted to respond.
Chair, I just wanted to add on the Act. Section 18.3 says a person who is registered in the category of candidate must perform work in the architectural profession only under the supervision and control of a professional of a category as prescribed. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, let's move along. I was hoping by 12 we would allow Mr. Decker to do the presentation. I'm also noting the time for the other participants who are engaging in this process. Obviously, we would like to cater for everyone and hear everyone's concern. So I'm now going to allow the candidates on the screen to speak and then allow Mr. Decker to make presentation in terms of those various building types. And this is really purely done in consideration of our time. So I'm going to allow Antonio da Silva, Mahuti Mbiza, and lastly, Ronaldo Passon again, to voice their concerns in that order, one after the other, and then we'll move to the presentation by Mr. Decker. Thank you. Antonio? Your mic is muted. Okay, let's move to Mahuti Mbiza. Mahuti? Okay, Antonio, your mic is open. You can speak.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair. This is Antonio da Silva. I'm a professionally registered architectural draftsperson. I just wanted to mention a little bit earlier on, they mentioned about providing proof of approved plans with stamps. When I submitted my LSDs, there was on 2 occasions I needed some plans. I went to the council and they couldn't find my plans. They were misplaced or something. So what I did, I submitted an affidavit and with some copies of the existing plans. They will start the stamp. Just wanted to bring that to your attention, or to the people that's doing the LSTs. Maybe they can take that into consideration as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Da Silva. The issue of LSD application and approved plans, affidavits, those who've not been granted exemption up to the stage they were hoping, perhaps up to stage 6. Colleagues, we've noted all your concerns, your grievances. I said earlier, we'll discuss the issue of approved plans. I'm not making any commitments, however. I'm saying we are going to look into it and see how best we can accommodate our RPs, because the intention of LSD, limited special dispensation, was not to limit anyone or to restrict you from trading. The intention was, once IDoW comes into full enforcement, you would be allowed to do the work you've been doing in the past. But we are seeing that there are gaps, there are gray areas that need to be addressed so that we don't have a profession, the architectural profession, that's aggrieved and feels like we've neglected and restricted you from your bread and butter. So we'll look into the issue of approved plans and affidavits and see how best we can improve our offering. Okay, Mahutsi Mbiza. Mahutsi Mbiza. Okay, I think he's struggling with audio there. We'll allow Ronaldo again, Passon, to speak. Then we'll allow Mr. Decker to present.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buzi, for allowing me to make a comment again. Yeah, just in general, I've got two comments. I know it's been spoken about already in the past on other occasions. We are still struggling with estates, property residential estates, that forces us to have a professional architect to sign off residential projects. Even though if you send the letter for them on that's available on the site website, they simply just say that they are selling the property with a rule that a professional architect has to submit the plans, and that's the only thing that they will accept. So that's the one problem that's still been going on. The other issue is in general, not just to IDoW, but in general, like you have in a town, you have zoning areas of properties that has mixed zoning. So in a mixed zoning, you're allowed to do restaurants, you can do multiple categories on that site, which is a great lack in the industry, which is causing a lot of jobs for people in the country, is the discrepancy of an agricultural building on a farm. So in an agricultural building, you can't just submit plans for that zoning as an industrial building or a parking building or a workshop. That type of sheds has been used or are being used for multiple purposes. And that's also a very big lack at municipal councils, where they simply just stop you and say, sorry, but this is now a packing shed. If you want to park when it's off season and you want to park your tractors in here, you need to rezone and go through a land use application to be able to park your vehicles inside, which is causing a lot of delays on projects. For myself, currently been fighting with especially one council that doesn't understand it. So yeah, costing my client a lot of money. For the delay of 2 years, we've been to City of Cape Town, traffic reports, everything. And then I have the exact same project in another town, which just simply went through easy. So yeah, there's definitely a shortage in mixed use category of an agricultural building on a farm, which I think also needs to get attention to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronaldo. And I'm going to appeal again to yourself and all the participants to please utilize this opportunity to this review opportunity to get the comments submitted to SACEP. It's important that all your concerns are addressed. We are going to allow everyone an opportunity to comment. There'll be a given period where all these comments need to be submitted. We don't want to be in a position where when we consult CBE and the Competition Commission, we further face backlash or resistance from the profession itself. Hence, we are having this review now. So it's very important, Ronaldo and the others, to utilize this opportunity to make sure that all the issues you are currently facing with IDoW, make sure that these are clearly articulated in the comments, written comments that need to be submitted to SACEP. Colleagues, I think I've given as many of our participants an opportunity to voice out their concerns. I'm now moving along with the program for the day. I'm going to allow Mr. Decker to present the various building types that we will be looking into. And the basis really for, or rather the background into how we formulated these new building types was based on the findings of the LSD applications. We found that there are some building types with the current, in the current IDoW publication, 27 of 2021, there are some building types that aren't represented. They aren't included in the matrix, such as garage, petrol stations, and other mixed-use facilities. We further noted that construction projects are unique, and they've certainly been modernized. They've been modernized, and there's more usages. There are more multi-use buildings, and you find other categories of registration working on these. So we felt it best that we present these buildings. This is not cast in stone. This is an initial step at trying to resolve the issue of building types that have been excluded from the matrix. So really we are saying today, this is a list of buildings that we would like to include. These buildings are not cast in stone. We'll add other buildings if and when we feel that the list is not representative of what's happening in practice. And further to this engagement, this consultation, we will be taking these building types to the education committee, whereby we'll be engaging academia, we'll be engaging architectural learning sites to align building types in terms of competencies, building complexities, those building ratings, so that we can then, based on the complexities and ratings, we can then align a building type to a registration category, meaning this building, this has such complexity, it's of high complexity, therefore it can be done by an architect, or similarly with other buildings and registrations. So that's the process that's going to unfold, and those engagements will be led by SACEP. So again, appeal, go through these, read the document, go through these, make your inputs, meaningful contributions, so that we can better our offering. Okay, so the floor now is handed to Mr. Decker, who will talk us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Good day to everyone again. Now, just a little bit background about, apart from what Vusi already have said about why we have got this new list here. The registrar asked me to produce or to do a little bit of research on behalf of the IDoW committee to come up then with a list taking into account the problems that we have experienced in the LSD committee in determining what type of building it was that was submitted by the persons who have submitted LSD applications. And also further to look at how can we enhance this whole process so that after we've done this building type or the building types, etc., and after all the engagements have been done, this is not cast in stone, by the way, so a lot of these can be put together, or there might be a further breakdown between different categories, etc., that we can then have something out there that everybody can understand. It is quite, I believe, important to note that the IDoW document is not just a document that is going to be used by architectural professionals. We've already heard that it's been used by local authorities who might not have the bigger understanding about where it comes from, and they just want to have something on paper that they can say, then this is what you are allowed to do and this is what you're not allowed to do. So therefore, you will also see that we have broken it down into categories, and that each subcategory then has got a number attached to it, like A1, A2, A3, etc. And sorry, just for a moment for me. I was also driving from KZN to Gauteng last night, and while doing so, I was just thinking about engagements that I had in the SABS forums where I'm also involved, especially with the 10400 standards, and especially being the convener of the latest Part A standard, where representatives from the DTIC as well as the NRS have said that we need to look at 820, which is part of the regulation, but that should come from SACAP or the architectural professionals. And I believe then that if we get this right, that it might, and I say might here, convince the DTIC then also to change 820 in the building regulations, basically to align then with the SACAP building categories. So how did we go about to do that? I've already said we looked at the difficulties that we have experienced in actually stating or deciding which type of building it was with the current categories in the IDoW. And in my research, I've come upon the International Building Code, and a lot of this is then aligned to the International Building Code, also taking into account what is currently in the IDoW and then the issues that we have experienced with the LSD applications. So the first category here you will see then will be agriculture, utility, and miscellaneous. And if you can just recall, the current IDoW has got just barns and sheds and breeding units. There's nothing about livestock shelters, and a lot of people have applied for breeding units where it's technically not a breeding unit, but just a livestock shelter. And I envisage that if we do it like this in future, that we just do it as what we see in Regulation 820 of the building regulations, that when we finally publish then a new IDoW document, that A1 agriculture barns and sheds with then the definition attached to that will appear then in the IDoW as if all the stakeholders then agree to that. So here are just a few. As I've said, it is not the final version. It is just a working document that is placed out there. It needs further to go through the Education Committee as well as the ALSs to determine then the different complexities and who can do it and who cannot do that. So we start off then with the building categories. And there's quite a lot under agriculture that you can see there: greenhouses, tunnels, silos, fuel tanks, warehousing and packaging. That was also a big issue. Sometimes a lot of people have submitted warehousing on farms and small packaging sheds on farms as normal warehousing that you might get in a city environment, etc., and where it's definitely not the same. The workshops for repair and maintenance of farming vehicles and implements. One of the speakers previously have mentioned difficulties that they might have got with the zoning applications, etc. to that. Hopefully this will in future then further assist in that. Then we get to our general type of buildings that is now everywhere. That's your freestanding carports and private garages. Storage only for 9 or less vehicles to all occupancies. Boundary walls, fences, retaining walls, surface car parks, multi-story underground car parks, etc. The next category is then when we go over to assembly and entertainment. And there was also a lot of issues in the LSD applications with this, and you will see that there are quite a few subcategories then, like religious assembly, community assembly, non-commercial, recreation, amusement, and other assembly types of commercial type, intended then for functions associated with food and drink consumption, then for spaces for viewing and performing arts or motion pictures, and then your exhibition spaces. And finally, no, it's not finally, then you've got your conference facilities there as well as your indoor sports facilities intended for the participation or the viewing of activities. So if you go in detail through that, you will see that, for instance, under religious, which we currently just got religious and crematoria, it is now already 5 subcategories there, which start with the smallest and go up to the bigger type of religious assembly buildings. And then separate from that, your crematoria, we might actually add something in there where you've got a mixed use, where crematoria is also attached to then a chapel or something like that in future. But that will depend then on the participation of all the stakeholders. The next subcategory is then your community assembly, your non-commercial ones. That is your typical community halls, especially that we get in the rural areas, where you've got your community walls that can be used for civic purposes. There's no fixed seating in there. Then the next category there is your little bit more complex town and city halls, and then activity halls associated with private institutions such as retirement complexes, where you've got a little hall there. You might not be engaged in the whole design of the retirement complex, the houses, etc. in there, or the frail care units in there. You might just be asked to do an activity hall there, and we have seen that in the LSD applications, and that is one of the reasons why we then separate this out as part of, although it's been associated with another occupancy, this is then a specific building group in that can be associated also then with the others, as you see there, but also with no fixed seating. The reason for no fixed seating is, if you look at our NBRs, there are certain additional requirements for fixed seating that comes in terms of fire, in terms of accessibility, that might put it in a more complex category of building. Subcategory B3 is your recreation, amusement, and other assembly types of commercial type, intended then for functions associated with food and drink. That starts off with your single banquet and dance hall with no fixed seating that you use for private functions. Just a note here, and that's where comments needs to come in. How do we then meet this up with conference facilities, or will become a mixed function then? Multiple banquet and dance halls with no fixed seating, used for private functions. Distinguish that from nightclubs, discos, and similar facilities. Especially the reason for this is that because you get the crowd factor in there and the escape out of that building in case of an emergency. We had some horrific incidents in the past that has been recorded where these things did not 100% comply, and people that have designed that did not know all the ins and outs of that, and that it's actually caused the loss of life in such incidents. Then your restaurants, which is your true restaurant without not a fast food outlet that provides seating. The next one is your cafeteria and similar dining facilities, as well as your fast food outlets that provide then the feeding. The cafeteria is your typical, I'm not sure if you get it in the cities anymore, but in the rural areas or the smaller towns, you get your so-called tea room still, where it's a cafe or something, but you also have a table or three where you can actually go and order a hamburger and something like that. That is to distinguish that then from a big restaurant with 20, 50 or how many tables that has been waited on. Taverns and bars is the other one, and then lastly, casinos there. As I've said, this is not exhaustive. With other words, it can be added onto if people come up with another type of use for that type of buildings that we did not think about in this presentation. Then your category B4 is spaces for the viewing and the performing arts or motion pictures. There we start off with your small performing art theaters. In many cases, they're part of a restaurant that we see especially in suburbs, in cities, etc. Then your motion picture theaters, your performing art theaters, your television and radio studios that admit an audience. And then you get your more complex, especially when it comes to acoustics, etc., your symphony and concert halls. Then your B5s will be the exhibition spaces, which starts off, it sounds funny or, but that's funeral parlors where you view only will resort under that. Art galleries, exhibition halls, museums. And then the next subcategory is your conference facilities. Here you get your single conference facility that's not ancillary to a main occupancy. A hotel can have a conference facility, and when we come to the hotels later on, you will see that we also will distinguish between an hotel with no conference facility versus a hotel with a conference facility. Here is that where you've got a single wall and you rent it out as for conference purposes. That's freestanding. It's not attached to an hotel or to any other occupancy. Versus that big conference centers containing several conference rooms with associated dining facilities. I'm thinking about it. I forgot its name now, but here in Gauteng, you've got a good example of just south of the airport. There is that in Boksburg. There's that big conference center there that you can go to. Then subcategory B7 will be your indoor sport facilities intended for participation and or viewing of activities, which then starts off with gymnasiums, swimming pools, ice rinks, squash and tennis courts. Other things that may come in here is action cricket and all those other type of things that either separate or grouped together under one heading. And then also where you've got multiple use facilities, where you can have 5, 6, 7 of these type of activities in one building. With other words, you get a much larger occupancy than where you just got a gymnasium or you just got an ice rink or something on its own, not part of another occupancy. Then your subcategory B8 will be outdoor sports facilities intended for participation and viewing of activities. That's your so-called pavilions with these little rooms that people can buy or rent per year or whatever it is. I forgot the name now. In Afrikaans, we call it a losie in English. But you get it at your primary and secondary schools, not so complex. But then you can go much more complex at your tertiary educational facilities. You also get your municipal sport facilities where that can come in. And then your big stuff like your stadiums, your grandstands, and your arenas. Moving over to the next category, main category will be the commercial type of buildings. And we start off here with your small filling or charging station with an associated convenience store, car wash facility, etc. That's your typical suburban filling station with express pick and pay or something, and maybe a car wash facility to that. And then you get the others, still your filling or charging station with the convenience store, but now you might have a fast food outlet like a Steers or something attached to that, or a cafeteria for that matter. Your single-use motor vehicle showrooms, second-hand car dealers, etc., make quite use of that. Then you get your service centers for motor vehicles, and then you get a combination of a vehicle showroom and a service center, which normally you will associate in with a new vehicle sales, like a BMW or a Volkswagen or a Nissan dealership. And some of them are without service stations. Others got the filling or charging station then attached to that. You see, we move into the 21st century by actually starting adding your charging stations as well now. Then you get your speculative and convenience shops, single-use shops only. You've got the one shop there. Also your specialized shop for the one shop there, and it's only that use there. Then you get your supermarket standalone, and then you move over to where you've got a few of these speculative shops or convenience shops added together, which is a typical neighborhood shopping center. Then you go over to your community, and I think there's a spelling mistake there, containing a supermarket, speculative and convenience shops, as well as fast food outlets. Moving to your bigger so-called malls, which is a regional shopping center containing a maximum of 5 anchor stores and several speculative shops, fast food outlets, and cafeterias. And then to your super regional shopping center, lifestyle center, containing more than five anchor stores. That is your typical big malls in the city, like the Minlin or the Mall of Africa, those type of shopping centers. I can tell you, although it is called a mall, I come from a small town, what we call a mall there is not what the city guys will call a mall, and we need to also differentiate from that, because currently we've only got malls or shopping centers or whatever the case might be in our IDFW, which is sometimes creating a lot of confusion. And also we have experienced a lot of issues when we've got an LSD application, and then it was this small strip mall, for instance, in a small area, and it's not the big mall. And if you now grant people permission to do that, it also means that they can do a super regional shopping center. So we must actually go over there and further define it. Now, what this will also cause is that where people are currently maybe excluded from doing this type of work, they might in future automatically be able to do this type of work depending on the category of registration, or where they are currently allowed to do certain things which might be a little bit too complex for the category of registration because it is one big or only one building type, but it can have different facets to it, that we now also make sure that those with the qualifications and the training to do so can do those, while those that are not trained or have the registration to do that can do still the smaller type, but will be excluded from doing the bigger ones. And I think that will give a better a grading, as I can call it now, for a typical type of building, from the low complexity to the high complexity in it. Then we go to category D, your business type of buildings, which starts off with your single story general office building, 1 or 2 or 3 offices together. Like my practice is in these type of small old, let's say an old house that's been converted into an office with a few outbuildings attached to that, but they rent it out for different things. It's not just one big office complex. Then you can go up to double story. Then you get your specialized purpose-built office developments for big companies, etc., but it's still not high-rise. And then you go to your high-rise specialized purpose-built office developments. The next category, quite a number of subcategories under that, is your warehousing factories and workshops, where it starts off with the simple public storage facilities, these shipping containers or multiple garage-like structures that you've got, which you can go and rent, store your stuff in there. And just to put people into the picture, if you don't pay your rent for that, etc., you will, well, if there's a South African version of Storage Wars, that is where that will come in then. Then you get your specialized storage facilities for documents and archives, because there needs to be a little bit more control there. Your retail warehouses, your specialized warehouses, which is called cool refrigerator, freezers type of storage, vehicle warehouses, high hazard warehouses, that is the so-called J1 occupancy, speculative factories, specialized purpose-built factories, high hazard factories, food processing factories, general workshops, purpose-built workshops, power generation plants, water and sewer purification, which was not even thought about at the moment, but we have got some of those in the LSD applications, and then waste disposal, transfer, and reclamation stations. Next, we move over to category F, which will be your medical facilities, which starts off with your simple doctor consulting rooms without medical treatment rooms. So there's not a little theater where they can put a plaster on a thing or put a few stitches in. It's just a consulting room. And if you need to have anything else, they either call an ambulance and you go to a better facility that can actually do that. And then you get your dental and doctor surgeries, where you've got a consulting room with a treatment or a procedure facility, which technically will be your dental surgeries, where they will perform the stuff right there, or in a doctor's facility where they might put stitches in or do small procedures in the doctor's rooms. Then your diagnostic laboratories. One thing that I've left out here we might consider is actually then specific facilities for mortuaries, your legal mortuaries and stuff like that. Medical research laboratories also in here, health centers, clinics, consulting and dispensing only, like your typical municipal clinic. Then you go over to your clinics where you've got treatment and procedure facilities, but no beds for overnight stay. And then you go to your clinics or step-down facilities, the so-called E4 occupancy, maximum of 16 beds. And then where you've got more than 16 beds, which technically in terms of the building regulations will become an E2, which is an overarching occupancy, but which will also include in currently your general hospitals, specialized hospitals, and academic hospitals. But here we need to differentiate between the complexity of those buildings. Also included in here will be nursing homes, frail care centers, etc. Then we come to your community buildings, government and private community, where you go to your civic center, which is a center where you can go and pay your service accounts. Might include libraries in it, but it's a whole civic center. Versus then, or then the next one will be your standalone libraries, your vehicle testing facilities, your police stations, ambulance and fire stations, municipal courts. I think Mrs. Niemenaber have alluded to this fact here, so I'm actually glad that we actually start doing it already here in the new categories: municipal courts, magistrates courts, high courts, and then detention centers, which is then the old prisons, etc. Education, going there, your preschool facilities, daycare, creche, go to primary school, secondary school. And but we have also found that you might have a combined school, which include from preschool to secondary school in that, and which is not currently addressed. Then you've got your other type of primary education facility, but it is not a secondary school per se, more practical in that matter, which is your FET colleges and other training facilities of similar nature up to what's it in NQF level 4 equals to matric. And then you've got your tertiary education and research facilities, where obviously NQF 5+ is then going to be awarded to people, which is your universities of technologies. And there might we go further if there's something like colleges, etc. We might be advised to do that as a separate one in there as well, depending on the feedback from the participants. Then we come to your residential. Now here we're looking at the residential unit itself, not if it's part of a complex, whatever it is, because if you design one house in an estate, normally the estate will already be established, etc. We don't talk about urban planning and town planning issues here. We're talking about the building itself. So here we look at the single-story dwelling unit, each one with its own entrance and exit out of the building. Your double-story dwelling units with its own entrance and exit. Then we get single-story dwelling units that share now entrances and exits. You might have a common passage. It becomes a little bit more complex where you're actually looking at fire protection and fire services, your double-story dwelling units with a shared entrance exit, then your dwelling units 3 stories and more, dwelling units of complex design, if there is something like that. We've actually seen that there might be some of complex design. Then you get your apartment buildings. That's now dwelling units with shared entrances, exits, but those are more than 2 stories in height. Student accommodation, single student rooms with the shared facilities, so you don't have facilities attached to each student room. They share the facilities, versus that of student accommodation, which can be single or couples accommodation, but you get there then a combination of shared facilities as well as separate ensuite facilities. Military barracks, dormitories, guest houses. In terms of our NBR occupancy classification of H5, which provide accommodation for a maximum of 16 guests, but no conference facility, otherwise it's not a guest house anymore. Then you get your hotels, obviously more than 16 guests. And I know now that a lot of town planning schemes may call it lodges or talk about 10 rooms, etc. I think here we go back to the design of the building itself and what you need to supply in those buildings in terms of our building codes. Hotel accommodation and guest facilities only. With other words, there's no conference facilities attached to that. And then lastly, hotels with the conference facilities to it. Category K deals with your transport buildings, which starts off. And again, here you will see how we have started to differentiate between different type of aviation type of buildings. Currently, we've just got airports, but you get the small municipal or private airport airfields where you might have a small, what do you call it, control building, and then also the aircraft sheds and stuff like that attached to that, versus your bigger regional airports that hasn't got customs facilities to it, then versus your international airports, including obviously the warehousing part of that, the airport itself with custom facilities, your railway stations, your bus transport stations, including your rapid transport terminals, your taxi ranks, the taxi rank only, and then you go get a combined taxi and bus transport station, harbor facilities, as well as transport vehicle overnight facilities, your typical truck stop with not accommodation, but ablution facilities and parking facilities then for your large vehicles. And then category L will be then, and there we need to further engage with, and there can be quite a lot of uses that can be included in here, where your typical mixed use type of building, shopping center at the, or shops at the bottom, and accommodation on top, or might be shops at the bottom with offices on top, that type of mixed use buildings that are not covered in the other categories. And yeah, Vizzy, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Decker, for talking us through those. Thank you, Mr. Decker, for taking us through the various building types that we would like to move IDoW towards. And you raised an important aspect indicating that the categories of registration with the new list of buildings, it's likely it's going to change. You find some buildings based on life experience, based on education, competency, whether one is now allowed to do that type of a building, which previously you were not allowed to do. So The other aspect which had not, I think we touched on earlier, which had not been dealt with was this is an initial look at the problem and how we want to resolve it. Obviously, we are going to engage education committee so that we align accordingly in terms of what one can and cannot do. So those engagements will be going forth. Colleagues, the time now is exactly 1:00, and I would love to offer as many participants in an interaction session where we get your feedback in terms of what was presented here by Mr. Decker. We would like to get a sense from our RPs what their views are in terms of what was presented. Let's look at issues core to IDoW. We've raised concerns about LSD applications earlier. We've noted them. But I would like us now in this interactive session, perhaps for the next few minutes, we allow those participants to speak, and then we'll then request the president of SACAP and the registrar, Advocate Fiduli, once we conclude the session, to officially close the session. So I think now what we can do, Mr. Munetsi, IT, if allowed by the panel, I know we've not had a body break. Perhaps we can allow a handful of questions and then allow the president to close formally the session. So I think let's allow those questions. However, from the participants, and I really appeal that we make those written submissions. It's important we get those written submissions. There has been some constructive inputs made today, you know, from Ronaldo. Mohammed made some inputs, yes. I mean, earlier, Mr. Swanepoel, Senegal, Outreach, and the others, you know, there's been some meaningful, also Mr. Niker, there's been some meaningful inputs made here today. But I'm also going to appeal that we make written submissions. We read the document itself. I know it might be a lot, but let's read through it and make some comments. It might be a paragraph or two, but I think it's important so that when we do enforce the new IDoW, your concerns would have at least been heard. Okay, so IT, if we can allow perhaps 5 participants. There are questions on the Q&As. Panel, you can guide me, registrar. Perhaps we can allow a handful and then request the president to officially close. Masango, you can guide. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. We still have some time. For now, we have 5 raised hands on the attendees. I don't know if I can admit them.
Yes, yes, please admit those. And once we've concluded with those 5 participants, we'll then request President Nduku to formally close the session. Colleagues, there's 500 of us in attendance here today. It's not feasible to hear everyone, but we request you make written submissions, please. Okay, Mr. Masango, please allow the 5, and then we'll then officially close.
Thank you, Chair. I'll allow the attendees to speak in the sequence that they raised hands. It will be Ian and Pillay, Jacobs, Pramkos, and Shanist.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for those hands. May I request perhaps also to allow the participants who've raised their hands to all speak. And once everyone has spoken, I will then allow the panel to respond on those queries, and then we'll proceed. So we'll have Ian first. Ian. Ian Marshall, you're muted. Ian, you're still muted. Okay, I think Ian is having a challenge there. Let's move to Pillay, Mayandran Pillay.
Good day all, and thanks for giving us the opportunity. My name is Mayandran Pillay. I'm from MIM Design Architects, mainland Pretoria. Listening to all the comments and all the inputs, some of our concerns is, I know this is a platform where one wants to protect the public. And I think it's high time that SACAP and the industry also protects the profession. And we find around a lot of things that we seem to be opening the doors for foreign companies to be practicing in our country, and undermining the industry in terms of fees and irregularities in terms of getting the work. And that's not in any way managed. And I think also a concern is we're going for identification of work and all that, but we're not looking after our profession in terms of fees. And the public is not aware of the scope of work that an architect or a technologist or a draftsman does in order for him to maintain his profession. Secondly, is to obviously get an income to support his family. So that is some of my concerns. And also is that it's like going back in the 80s where restrictions were put to anybody to do a plan and go and sign off to an architect. And here we've gone back in the same situation where we are restricting people, but obviously, like you said, the platform is open for the competency. And also another point is that architects who are now given the privilege to do any type of work, and a draftsman or a technician is restricted, but he's still paying the same fees to SACAP. But on one hand, he's been taken away scope of work to actually get an income. So in a nutshell, I came across many architects who are not even competent to do the work themselves. If we look around in some of the building structures around. So shouldn't it also be a platform where everybody should be recategorized in terms of their qualifications, experience to give out identification of work? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pillay. Jacobus Johannes Smith. Johannes Smith, you are muted. Jacobus Smith. Okay, I'm moving along, colleagues. Mr. Swanepoel, your hand is up. You can, floor is yours.
I just want to clarify the board notice 27 of 2021 is the current IDoW. But in the beginning of the meeting, you mentioned something about a document that came into effect in November 2022. Is it the same document? Is there a different document? Where do we access these documents?
Thank you, Mr. Swanepoel. I'm not aware which document you are referring to, which was published in November.
Chair, if I may come in here, the board notice was published in March and it came in effective the following year in November. So as with all legal documents, you get a publication date and then you get an effective date. So he refers to the IDFW.
Okay, I hope that clarifies it, Mr. Swanepoel. Shanez, you are next on the screen. Shanez, your mic is muted. Shanez. Okay, Ian, is your mic back? Are you able to speak again? Oh, shit. Yes, please go through.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm a professional architect and I do quite a bit of work in the mining sector. And I often find that when it comes to approval, so first of all, will the new framework include buildings and structures within that category? And then also I find that very often the clients or in that sphere, they don't actually submit plans for approval and the onus is placed on the professional to take liability for compliance aspects. How does SACAP deal with those sorts of, or advise that one deals with those sorts of projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Shanez. Colleagues, I've given the 5 participants on the screen an opportunity to raise their concerns. We had a query from Mr. Pillay relating to the regulator not quite protecting the registered professionals, and you know, the shift perhaps Mr. Pillay is saying there needs to be focus on the needs of the RPs and not necessarily place so much emphasis on the protection of the public. You also raised an issue relating to foreign firms practicing in South Africa, the regulation of professional fees and restriction to practice. So you've raised quite a number of points, but I'm going to focus on the core ones that relate to IDoW. This is restriction of practice. May I allow Mr. Councillor Moideen and Mr. Govender to respond on these, and perhaps also to respond to Shanez's query about work done in mines and how SACAP ensures compliance. Okay, Councillor Moideen and Mr. Govender.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pillay, firstly, the architectural, it's not, is the Architectural Act that protect the public, as well as enhance the status of the architectural professional as well, and the architectural standards. So there is the combinations, all inclusiveness, and not only just the public or the professional, but the standards as well as a combination of everything. And then coming to foreign companies that come into the country, there is a ruling that foreign companies cannot just come into the country and do the work. There must be a foreign company coming into the work. They can have 50%. They must have an association with a South African company which holds 51% of the shares in that company. I hope that answers your questions, Mr. Pillay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Moideen. Mr. Govender.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak on, as you pointed out, the query about restrictions. So I just like to inform the audience or bring to their awareness or remembrance that the architectural profession, or the Canberra Accord specifically, and when you look at the UIA and UNESCO documents, especially with regards to education and training in architecture, they only speak of one category, and that's architect. Now, what that means is the whole body of knowledge around the world recognize only one person, and that's called an architect. Now, our Architectural Act, or the various Building Environment Acts, has gone so far to actually create different categories so that there could be a part of migration from a lower category to a higher category. So in that, South Africa is a world leader, number one. Number two, the education and training that a newly qualified person, in this case, for example, maybe a draftsperson or technologist that comes out of university today, they are restricted because they are now automatically aligned to the IDoW. So what that means is, for those persons on this platform today who've been practicing for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and who have a vast array of experience, they are limiting themselves if they have not undertaken limited special dispensation or special consent or RPL. They themselves are now competing or allowing themselves to compete with the newly qualified, whereas they could have been differentiated. So I would earnestly suggest the audience to please reread the document. It seems like a very heavy and complex document, but if you take your time and go through it, you'll find there's enough mechanisms and protection for the work-based or the existing RPs that have been in practice for many, many years. So there is no restriction apart from the restrictions we place on ourselves. And I would urge the audience or the members to please engage with us in whatever fashion that's acceptable, so that we can guide and advise and show them how they need to move forward. Because there's no restriction other than what we impose on ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Registrar and Mr. Bastu.
No, thank you very much. Just to amplify the answer given by Councillor Moedin there on the issue of foreign professionals. So if you look at the code of conduct, it does regulate the practice of foreign architecture professionals. In fact, it requires that they must first be registered with SECAP before they can be able to practice. They can be registered for a particular project or for a specific contract. They can't just come and practice illegal. So if there's any foreign professional who's doing work out there and it's not registered, just alert us so that we can take steps to correct that. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Registrar. Mr. Bastu.
Thank you, Chair. Just to further add to the conversation regarding foreign architectural practices, we also need to take note that as a country, we have signed international treaties as well, which allows for businesses to both operate within the boundaries of South Africa, and outside of the South African boundaries as well. So we need to take those treaties into account as well. Hence, we have all these that have been signed. And then going forward, I just picked up one chat, from the chat group. So there's someone raising a concern regarding the fact that he cannot do swimming pools now. So I'm assuming that person is a draftsman. I couldn't find his comment again. So I think it limited me in the number of comments I can receive. But however, if one thing is coming clearly is that we are not reading the document, the IDoW document. So when you look at the work allowed for draftsmen, it says there, a single dwelling unit, a single swimming pool for residential use. So a draftsman can do a residential dwelling and a combination of a swimming pool. So there is no restriction, and this is for the newly qualified, newly registered draftsmen. our historical draftsman will obviously use the LSD application and say, listen, I have been doing swimming pools that fall outside the residential demarcation, and here's my evidence, and you'll be allowed to continue to do that work. So we are appealing to all our members and our volunteer associations to please, revisit the IDoW and look at it and try and understand the way the document has been put together. And then when you are commenting, you then align your comments to these documents, so we can then better, improve the document. However, the thing about restrictions, we understand that there are restrictions. However, the LSD was put in place to actually remove those restrictions or to remove those barriers for those who have been practicing work outside the category that has been identified in the IDoW. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pastu. Councillor Moideen. You are muted, Councillor Moideen.
Mr. Chair, there's just one more thing that I want to add to individuals coming into the country. They will not be allowed to work in the country if the profession, whatever they apply for, is not on the country's scarce skilled list or Home Affairs scarce skilled list. That is the only time they will make an application to work in the country. Must be on the Home Affairs scarce skills list. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moideen. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the mining question, if I'm not mistaken, and I stand corrected on this one, I would think that mining falls under the Engineering Council. So I'm not sure if that gives an indication of where one might find an answer to that question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. All right. Thank you, colleagues. All right, so we've drawn closer to the end of the session today. I think for myself, on behalf of SACAP, I would really like to thank everyone here today, all the 500 participants who've made meaningful contributions. I'm grateful for the time you've made to attend this webinar so that we can review IDoW and make inputs so that we improve on the statutory mandate offered by SACAP. I'm going to appeal to everyone to make written submissions, comments. There'll be a format that SACAP is going to distribute to everyone. The format for the written submission, if and when you require the soft copy, the IDoW publication, so that you can, as and when you make comments in the document, that can be made available to our participants. Colleagues, there's still quite a lot of work to do, but I'm grateful that we were able to have this consultation process. And we are grateful that you are assisting us to fulfill our mandate, further consult, and ensure that IDoW is implemented. There's still quite a lot of work to be done. There's still some consultation that needs to be done. There's research that needs to be done in aligning or correlating the qualifications and the building types. Those still need to be aligned with competencies and what others can do based on their life experience. So, colleagues, I'm saying thank you for having attended today. We're going to request those written submissions. This work is ongoing. And again, we appeal you read the document. This is a live document and it's going to change as and when we are seeing how the profession in practice, in reality, how it's you know, the trends within the architectural profession. Ours here is we are responding to the trends in the architectural profession. Hence, we are having this review here today. Colleagues, thank you. I'm now handing over to the president of SACAP, who is going to officially close the session for us. But I thank you all, and I appreciate the written submissions and comments that will be sent to SACAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, Mr. Pailane. I am also going to thank you again after Mr. Pailane has already thanked you. RPs saw the numbers going beyond 500. And it just shows how serious you are taking this profession. And we also are here for you. It is very important that you take this opportunity as an opportunity and as a chance for you to actually contribute towards the betterment of the IDoW. As you've heard the discussions, we might not have all had chance to echo our views, but as it was mentioned here, you know, the information is respected in a written form. You will be expected to actually write to SACAP. Those that have experienced personal problems or communication with SACAP, they must communicate with SACAP through registrar to get whatever they want clarity on to continue getting the information they want to. SACAP will always have its doors open because SACAP is here for the profession. So thank you all for taking the whole day out. It is actually the whole day because now we are in the afternoon to contribute. You know, even those who did not have time to actually say, but they've listened, and probably some of their queries have been attended to or asked by their colleagues. I thank you all. And of course, SACAP staff under the registrar, the leadership of registrar, thank you very much for organizing this webinar. And of course, those councillors who attended, and the chairperson of IDoW, VOSI, and the committee members for working so hard to make sure that this webinar is a success. I want to thank you all. I now declare the webinar closed.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Registrar. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.